Good morning. I'm hoping I'm on, right? I'd like to thank you for the invitation to speak today, and I feel I should give a little disclaimer. You've heard that I'm a physician. I'm not a pastor. I don't have a degree in race relations. And I'll agree that I seem a strange choice for speaking about this on Martin Luther King Jr. Sunday. But I'm hoping to share some of just my personal walk towards an understanding of justice. I'll start with a conversation that I'm pretty sure we have all had. That's not fair. Life's not fair. Kid, get used to it. How many times have we heard this conversation? How many times have we had this conversation ourselves? The reason we have this conversation over and over is that it's true. Some people are born tall, some short. Some people can eat cheesecake all day and not get fat. Life isn't fair. But do you remember when you first realized that life was not just unfair, but also unjust? I have to confess that I grew up in Colburn, a town where racial diversity was not quite zero, but it's close. I considered myself to be a person who didn't see color. I once tried to demonstrate my lack of racism by saying, I love the Cosby Show, and I didn't even realize the people on that show were black. I had ancestors who were physically beaten right here in Mesa County for housing people of color, but continued to do it anyway. My grandparents fostered and adopted kids of different colors and faced hardships because of it. I have 2 black adopted cousins, and for years, I felt that this proved I couldn't be racist. And the fact that I grew up with my parents raising 4 kids in the middle of nowhere on 1 public school teacher's salary meant that I didn't have privilege. It wasn't until college in St. Louis, or near St. Louis, that I ever had a real conversation about race with someone who was black. And the first time an urban young man told me about a time he was arrested for no reason, I didn't believe him. I was polite enough not to say so, but in my head I thought, I'm sure there was something you did. The police don't just arrest people for no reason. When the second person told me his story, my inner reaction was similar. I still didn't believe the third person. And my inner monologue actually got more cynical. I said, wow, I guess things in East St. Louis really are that bad. Is there no one there who isn't a criminal? I was Nathaniel, asking, can anything good come out of the black inner city? Luckily for me, God kept sending Phillips into my life to say, come and see. The fourth story came from someone who I had known longer. I knew him to be kind, upright, trustworthy, and a person who really wanted to be a state police officer, and now he is. He told me his story of being arrested because he matched the description. He told me he was handcuffed and thrown against a car in front of his family, and then released several hours later with no explanation, no charges, no paperwork to fill out. And finally, I believed, and it made me question my reaction to the initial stories. Sometimes the invitation from Philip to come and see does not come from an individual person. For me, I think of the semester I spent in Mozambique and feeling that it was impossible that Gorongosa, a village with no running water, no electricity, existed at the same time and on the same planet as the America I had left. I think of the fact that Flint, Michigan is right here in this same country and still, to this day, does not have water that will not poison its children. I think of the day Mike Brown was killed and became just the most well-known of the many unarmed young black men who were killed without trial, without justice. And Mike Brown and Hands Up, Don't Shoot was followed by Eric Garner and I Can't Breathe, Philando Castile, Sandra Bland, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, and it becomes hard to contain all the names. At first glance, it may be easy to dismiss these inequalities as the fault of the people at the bottom. Have you heard, just obey the police, you won't get shot? Or, as our current president to dismiss entire countries and continents as places we wouldn't want to go to or accept people from. Even easier is to dismiss the words of the president as just vulgar words said by a flippant person. But the most tempting dismissal of all is to say, I would never say that because I'm not racist. But this categorization of people based on where they come from and what they look like is not new. It is as old as Nathaniel saying, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" It is as personal as the song, "O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You discern my thoughts from afar." You see, the God of the universe knows that what appalls me when it comes out of the president's mouth lurks in my heart even as I stand here today. I once dismissed an entire community of color as the boonies, not taking time to understand that the history of this community was that it was far away from communities of white communities for their own safety. It's easy for me to say I didn't mean any harm by it, because I didn't. But it's harder to admit that they caused harm. It's harder to admit that we cause harm every day. I've touched Black people's hair without their permission. I have mocked names that sound different to my European ancestry ears. I've benefited from a system of white supremacy since the moment of my conception. My mother was 3 or 4 times more likely to survive my birth than my cousin's Black mother was. I was 3 times more likely to survive to my 5th birthday than my Black cousins were. I remain proud that my ancestors were more progressive when it comes to race. That is part of who I am. But part of who I am also includes that I live on land that does not belong to me. My progressive ancestors, by virtue of settling this land, contributed to the genocide and displacement of the Utes. It would be easy to say, I didn't do that, and besides, I can't go back in time and fix it. And it's true, I didn't do that, and I can't go back in time and fix it. But we can change what happens now. We can dismantle the systems of white supremacy that we see around us. It starts with an invitation from Philip, saying, come and see. Come and see, by educating ourselves about the enduring racial inequalities. For example, did you know that today, in this country, Native American tribal police cannot arrest or prosecute criminals who commit crime on tribal lands if they're white? Come and see. By reading books like The New Jim Crow or The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Come and see. By following D. Ray McKesson, an activist in Baltimore, or Tracy Blackman, a UCC pastor from Ferguson, Missouri. Come and see. Right here in Western Colorado by going to Black Lives Matter or joining the Hispanic Affairs Project. Come and see by spending time with people who don't look like you. And I don't mean having your one token Black friend. I mean having real relationships with real community. Ask them about themselves. Ask them what they fear. Believe what they tell you. Don't try to defend whiteness or white culture. It may take a while for them to tell you the whole truth. It may be really difficult to hear what they have to say. It may sound like an accusation against you. I guarantee it will be uncomfortable. But the discomfort is worth the transformation. Martin Luther King Jr. said, hate is just as injurious to the hater as it is to the hated. Like an unchecked cancer, hate is too great a burden to bear. Nelson Mandela said, To be free is not merely to cast off one's own chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. I have come to believe that the freedom we all seek is found not in the freedom to do and say as we please, but instead in the painful process of unlearning the cancer of self-supremacy to be transformed into beloved community. As a doctor, I see people in discomfort a lot. One of my favorite parts of my job is delivering babies. There's just so much joy in helping mothers bring new life into the world, but there's a lot of pain also. The reality of childbirth is painful. It's bloody, it's smelly, there's tears, sweat, and really hard work to be done. And there's risk. Sometimes it doesn't end in joy, but in the deepest sorrow and a tiny burial plot. Sometimes I think that justice is like that. In pregnancy, there's this thing called prodromal labor. It's basically contractions that don't do anything. It can last for hours, or days, or even weeks. And we have to say, you aren't in labor yet. Go home, try to rest, come back when the pain is even worse. And as you can imagine, no one likes it. It's one thing to have pain that's getting you somewhere. It's another to have pain for seemingly no reason. Sometimes we see the pain of injustice, and we don't seem to be getting anywhere. Worse, sometimes we deliver a stillborn baby. We march, we protest, we call our senator, we chant love wings. But down the street, a fellow protester gets hit by a car and killed. ICE deports another mother. Another refugee is turned away. Or we find ourselves participating in the blame of the victim. We promise ourselves we won't remain silent anymore, yet we can't find the words, and we find ourselves laughing uncomfortably at yet another racist joke told by a family member. After you've been delivering babies for a while, some other patterns emerge. There's a very specific moan that you hear just when she's ready to push. And it isn't that high-pitched scream that you hear on movies and TV. It's deeper, more animal. And there's a time when nearly every woman says the same thing to me with the same wild look in her eyes. She says, I can't do this, just take it out of me. And I know when she says that, she's about to do it. She may really feel done, but that is when her body takes over, and we have a baby. And in that moment, a woman is transformed into a mother. She sees the fruits of her labor. We see new life. And the transformation is worth the discomfort. I don't think we always get to know if the work we do toward justice or the pain we see is prodromal labor or the real thing. I don't think we always get to know if the birth will end in joy or we will bury yet another hope for justice. I do know that justice does not come without struggle and pain. I do know that we are called to be the people of this struggle. John Lewis said, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? This is our moment. We can choose to break down walls. We can choose to be builders of real justice and true peace. But it will take all of us. We aren't just talking about firing some racist cops or stopping people saying the N-word. We're talking about breaking the yoke of oppression in every aspect. If we want to be a city on the hill, we've got work to do. We have a revolution to win. In this time of pain, where justice seems to be attacked around every corner, What if this pain is the labor pains of a great transformation? What if this pain is the pain of the transformation of ourselves? What if this pain is the transformation of our world? What if this time the labor pains are real? What if God is asking us to push? What if we push and push and push, and like a woman in labor, just when we think we can't, justice is born? Thank you.